What these three European nations just did was to unilaterally decide that Israel must give up parts of its ancient homeland, including, I presume, half of Jerusalem, and give it to the Palestinians. Israel, a sovereign nation, is being dictated to by the world once again. Welcome to Stakelbeck Tonight. I'm Erick Stakelbeck, and the prophet Isaiah could have been talking about the year 2024 when he said, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness." Folks, we have several examples of this in the past few days alone, but let's start with today. The nations of Norway, Spain, and Ireland all declared that they will officially recognize a Palestinian state. Now, Israel is furious with this, and it's not hard to see why. What these three European nations just did was to unilaterally decide that Israel must give up parts of its ancient homeland, including, I presume, half of Jerusalem, and give it to the Palestinians. Israel, a sovereign nation, is being dictated to by the world once again. Now, the leaders of Norway, Spain, and Ireland say they'll make this recognition official next week, and that they anticipate other nations will follow and recognize the nation of Palestine, which again would be located in areas that are currently part of the nation of Israel. So folks, you do the math. However you slice it, Israel comes out on the wrong end. Thankfully, Israeli leaders are not taking this lying down. Israel today recalled its ambassadors from Norway, Spain, and Ireland, and Israel's foreign minister said these nations are rewarding terrorism. Folks, he's exactly right. The big takeaway from October 7th for much of the world was apparently that if you slaughter enough Jews, you can have whatever you want. Carry out the worst massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust, butcher 1,200 people, and take hundreds more into captivity, and you get a state. But if Israel dares to fight back and destroy the Hamas terrorist behind the massacre, well, the world doesn't like that very much. Witness the announcement on Monday by the International Criminal Court that it's seeking arrest warrants for Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. According to Karim Khan, the chief prosecutor of this global kangaroo court, Israel is causing the, quote, extermination of the people of Gaza and intentionally starving them. He's accusing Israel of genocide, but he was strangely silent during the reign of a man known as the Butcher of Tehran. That would be Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, who was killed in a helicopter crash over the weekend. He earned the Butcher nickname for personally overseeing the execution of thousands of Iranian dissidents. He was an evil man. Yet his memory was honored yesterday at the UN, where flags flew at half-staff, and there was a moment of silence for the Butcher.
Now stand and join in observing a minute of silence in remembrance of the loss of life in a helicopter crash of the President of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Now, this kind of moral depravity is par for the course at the UN, but the Biden administration also offered its condolences to Iran over Raisi's demise. Good called evil, evil called good. A short while ago, I was joined by former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, who shared how and why Israel must prevail in a world turned upside down. Take a look. Former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, thanks so much for joining us. And what a time to have you come to us here as a Rafah operation may be looming. Hamas's 4 remaining battalions in that city. You know this very well, serving in the elite special forces unit, serving as defense minister, serving as prime minister. Can you tell everyone why Hamas will not stop? They're driven by an ideology that, if they're left alive, they will no doubt try to duplicate October 7th and many more.
Exactly. Hamas is based on a very radical jihadist ideology, which is explicit in their own constitution. You know, the United States has a constitution, so does Hamas. Within Hamas's constitution, beyond a lot of crazy stuff, one of the things they say there is they got to kill the Jews. And if there's a Jew hiding behind a stone, let the tree come and say, come here and kill the Jew. This is in their constitution. So this is what Hamas is about, and there's no middle way, there's no peace to be reached with someone who wants to destroy you. That's why this ought to be a fairly straightforward thing. Back Israel, we're fighting radical Islam and jihad on behalf of the entire world. We expect the United States of America to stand behind us and help.
There shouldn't be any confusion here, and yet there seems to be some daylight perhaps emerging between the U.S. government right now and Israel. How concerned are you? We had obviously the recent comments by President Biden saying he would withhold an arms shipment to Israel over Rafah. How concerned are you, and not even about the literal daylight, but the perception of daylight between Israel and America that our shared enemies like the Iranian regime are noticing?
I think any perceived daylight between the United States and Israel is extremely harmful in several ways. First of all, our enemies see it, and it encourages our enemies, and they think that if they just continue fighting a bit, they'll ultimately get let off the hook. Secondly, our allies in the region also see it. And third, I think just in terms of the moral aspect of it, I mean, imagine after D-Day, let's say 5 months after D-Day in World War II, at some point you'd stop pushing into Nazi Germany and just stop, or be asked to have zero casualties, civilian casualties. That's not how wars work, especially given that Hamas is using its own people as human shields. So I think the best thing for everyone is to let Israel get the job done as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's common sense that you're sharing in times where common sense is not so common. By the way, we still have many hostages in Gaza. What do you think the approach should be there from Israel? Because sadly, here in the United States, we're not hearing about the hostages nearly enough like we should be. And by the way, there are still American hostages there in Hamas captivity as well.
This is absolutely crazy. These hostages are mainly people, citizens that were pulled out of their beds on the morning of October 7th by these Hamas monsters and are left in underground tunnels all across the Gaza. And my approach is fairly simple. Israel should have only one option for the leader of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar. Here's the deal. If you surrender, you raise a white flag, you release all the hostages, we will let all of you get on a boat and get out of Gaza alive. Otherwise, we're coming to kill all of you, to the very last one of you, or at least the vast majority. And then tell the military, go ahead and get the job done. Don't stop until they raise a white flag. Total surrender was an approach. Unfortunately, I have to say, I don't understand why my own government is vacillating on this. We should have taken Rafah 4 months ago. The rest of Gaza, you don't run wars by stopping in the middle or wavering. You have to have it continuous and forceful.
Yeah, that's an interesting point in that, look, it seems that the offensive in Gaza has stalled a bit over the past few months. Do you get that sense? How much of that is due to international pressure on Israel?
Well, it's no secret that about 3-4 months ago, things have slowed down, and that's a profound mistake. Imagine a boxing match where you hit the other guy, but every time he gets hit, you let him rest for a few days and then continue the match. That's not how you win. You win by zeroing in after he's hit with another hit and another hit until the enemy collapses. That's the only way to win wars. I think this is due to various factors, among them international pressure, and I don't think we should abide to that international pressure. Yeah. We need to do what's right for Israel.
April 13th, 2024, also a pivotal date in terms of not only Israel's security, but world security, when the Iranian regime, for the first time, directly launched over 300 projectiles at the Jewish state. Do you get the sense that since then, and by the way, 99% intercepted, incredible, but do you get the sense that since that onslaught by Iran, that Iran's regime is emboldened, that they think, hey, we got away with it and perhaps we can do this again?
I think so. I believe that Iran has been hitting Israel for the past 30 years through its arms. It's like an octopus of terror. It has an arm in Lebanon called Hezbollah, an arm in Gaza, an arm in Syria, an arm in Iraq, in Yemen, the Houthis, and they just go on without paying a price.
The most lethal tentacle of this Iranian regime octopus is Hezbollah in the north. We've got tens of thousands of Israelis evacuated right now from their homes in the north near the Lebanon border. No clear date on when they can return home. And Hezbollah, we talk about Iran being emboldened, Hezbollah has increased its attacks in the past few weeks. How do you think Israel should deal with Hezbollah, which is such a serious, serious threat?
Well, Hezbollah claims that it is the protector of Lebanon. And in fact, while it's not really protecting Lebanon, what it is doing is serving the interests of the Ayatollahs and the mullahs in Iran 1,000 kilometers to the east. So what's happening is the people of Lebanon are paying a price for this radical jihadi Shiite ideology that they're not part of. I think they understand that, and if Hezbollah crosses certain red lines, which it's getting darn near, all of Lebanon will pay a massive price because of Hezbollah. I think the bottom line is that we need to get Hezbollah away from our border, about 10 kilometers away. We need to do it by force if necessary. If possible, obviously it would be better by diplomatic means.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like a sustainable situation to have tens of thousands of Israelis evacuated from the north while Hezbollah remains near full strength. And by the way, so people know, again, you served in an elite Israeli Special Forces unit, also served in the Israeli reserves, and still do, by the way. You've been in Lebanon. You've been on missions against Hezbollah. Give our viewers a sense of what Hezbollah stands for. We know they stand for the destruction of Israel, but dig a little deeper for us on their genocidal ideology so that people know this is a threat that ultimately must be dealt with.
You're right. I did have the privilege of fighting and killing Hezbollah fighters, quite a few of them in the 90s, and later on in the Second Lebanon War in 2006. Hezbollah is based on a very radical jihadi ideology whose goal ultimately is to create Islamic State across the entire world, but starting Middle East, Europe, North Africa, and that's what they want to achieve. They are, in fact, a proxy of Iran. They serve Iran's ideology. They get about $1 billion a year for Iran. When Iran is packed with money, they get more. When Iran is low on money, they get less. That's why any economic sanctions on Iran weaken all of its proxies, including Hezbollah, and that's why we encourage the American administration to ratchet up those sanctions and certainly not relieve those sanctions, because more money to Iran is more money to all of these terror groups across the Middle East, and it's more American soldiers who pay a price, Israeli soldiers, Israeli citizens, and innocent people around the world. Hezbollah operates all across the world, not only in the Middle East.
Great point, including in South America, by the way. So a serious global threat, former Prime Minister, as you said. Been talking about some heavy subject matter so far, but there is a lot of positive news as well. And one positive development over the past few years that you saw up close as Prime Minister were the Abraham Accords. How are the Abraham Accords bearing fruit? And look, we mentioned April 13th. The Saudis participated, helping to intercept some of those incoming Iranian projectiles. Not an Abraham Accords member, but it shows you the increasing ties between Israel and the Sunni Arab world. Can you talk more about the positives of the Abraham Accords and the impact that's had on Israel and the region?
The Abraham Accords are vital for the entire region, not only for Israel, because the Abraham Accords are basically an alliance of the reasonable countries in this region to push back on this big wave of radical Islam, whether it's Iranian radical Islam, meaning Shiite, or radical Sunni Islam, which is the Muslim Brotherhood and its affiliates. So this is necessary for everyone, for the Saudis, for the Emirates, for Jordan, for Egypt, because all these countries are being threatened by the same wave of radical Islam. That's why the Abraham Accords are so vital. And the second dimension is, of course, the economic one, which is amazing. There's a lot of great stuff going on between us and our partners. They, though, are feeling a lot of pressure from the street because Al Jazeera is sort of brainwashing their own people against them. So we gotta win. That's the most important thing, to just win. It's not impossible. It's Hamas. We can certainly defeat Hamas, and we got to do it as quickly as possible.
Hey, you have a high-tech background. In addition to politics and special forces for the IDF, can you talk more about how Israel continues to be a leader in high-tech, in science, in innovation, in breakthroughs that is blessing the entire world?
Israel is just always steaming with young entrepreneurs that are starting up companies in the technology fields. We have a very go out and get stuff done approach that I guess is to some degree embedded in us throughout our military service, because you have young men and women at a very young age assuming huge responsibility. So when you come out of the army, let's say at the age of 23, 24, you feel that you can do anything because you've already done so much in the military. The same goes for thousands and thousands of young entrepreneurs. So folks here in Israel like building companies, starting up stuff, not necessarily building a slow career in a big company. They'd rather build their own company.
I was so struck in February during my most recent visit to Israel by Generation Z in Israel. Here in the United States, Generation Z gets criticized pretty heavily for a lot of reasons. But the youngest generation in Israel right now, former Prime Minister, I'm thinking 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, what just a strong, mature generation that right now, like you once did as a young man, are fighting Hamas face-to-face in the trenches, in the tunnels of Gaza. Can you talk about the younger generation in Israel and why what we've seen since October 7th in them is so encouraging for Israel's future?
You're absolutely right. I draw a lot of confidence from these younger people, the younger generation. They are so full of initiative and innovation and just getting stuff done. No whining, no complaining. There's no, they don't get micro offended or need safe spaces or triggered or all of that nonsense. They go out and do.
What is your vision for Israel going forward? Are you optimistic about the future of the Jewish state?
We got to get this mission done, decimate Hamas, eliminate them, and in parallel, build the strength of this country. Be a country that shows the world how you deal with the toughest problems in the world. My vision for Israel is a strong, proud nation that's solving the most difficult problems that the world is facing, and continuing to do this with our friends. You know, I admire the United States of America, which is an amazing nation, and if you look at its history, time and again, it went and stood up for its values, whether it was World War I, World War II. We are not asking America to fight our wars. We're going to do the job. We are asking America to have our back, to be with us. We're sending the soldiers, but we need that, and I want to use this opportunity to thank the wonderful men and women of the United States of America for being Israel's best friend in the world.
Folks, we've said it before, but it bears repeating. Israel is the size of the state of New Jersey, and Jews make up less than 1% of the world's 8 billion people. And yet, they always seem to be the object of the world's focus and its anger. Why? Because at the end of the day, what we're seeing unfold is a spiritual battle. Those who hate God hate his people and his land. When you put it in that context, sadly, it makes perfect sense. Hey, God said in Deuteronomy that Israel would be the head of the nations and not the tail, and the world's attention will continue to be fixed on this tiny sliver of land smack dab in the center of the world. Jerusalem, by the way, is the center of that center, and as talk of a Palestinian state ramps up, keep an eye on God's one and only holy city. Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.